The Smashing Pumpkins, known for such hits as Being Beige and Run to Me, are back at it again. And we're here to talk about it. This is Not Every Single. I'm Joe.
And I'm Stephanie.
So they have returned with a single called Beguiled, a new podcast, a new concept record, pretty much the original lineup back for the last few years. There's a lot to talk about here. And I know you're a massive Monuments to an Elegy fan, so we'll get into it.
I always say elegy weird. Elegy.
Elegy?
No.
Monuments to an Elegy.
Moving on.
Teargarden by Kaleidoscope. That was the other one.
Is it spelled weird?
Yeah, it's like Kaleidoscope.
Okay. That's a pretty common thing for them.
Yeah. I mean, it's continuing that, odd spellings. Yeah, odd spellings of stuff. And now we got a new record called Autumn. ATUM, I believe.
But it's like, it's not referring to the season, right? It's referring to like a...
Yeah.
What was it? Like a deity?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. I like the name. I especially like the new look of the packaging and even the way the name The Smashing Pumpkins looks, because they're really hit and miss for me with like artwork and how things look aesthetically, especially in the last decade. So it was cool to see like an album cover that I'm like, oh yeah, that's awesome. That looks great.
I was kind of into the whole, the shiny, oh so bright sort of
Art
Deco thing, but I don't think they really pushed it far enough.
Yeah, that was odd because Shiny and Oh So Bright Part 1, and if I try to say the whole name, we'll run out of time here, but that was like Part 1, and then Part 2 didn't like have the name attached. It was just called Seer, and it still had that kind of artwork to link it together. And then in classic Pumpkins form, then like, is there going to be a Part 3? I don't know. We're onto this new thing now.
It's new. It's different. It's radio rock is back.
You got some chugga rock going on.
It just comes right in right away.
Chung 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 chugga chung chung chung. So to me, Beguiled, that main riff sounds like, if we're playing a gig and the sound guy is like, all right, and test your guitar real quick, see if you got a guitar signal. And I would go chung 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 chugga chung chung. Yeah, it's working. I can hear it. Yeah. It's
like, it's kind of, I'm of two minds starting, because it really grabs you. It's not very original, but at least you're like, oh, Pumpkins are doing this now?
I was happy to hear guitars.
Yeah.
I'm happy to hear guitars, and, hearing Chamberlain come in with like, that's always going to feel good to me. Going backwards a little bit, just to give you some brief context of my history with the Smashing Pumpkins, is it goes back quite a ways. I was really, really obsessed in high school, but I've heard them since I was born. I was born the year Gish came out, and through my parents, I've heard their music like my whole life. But in high school is when I was really, really into them. My favorites were Melancholy and Machina 2, actually, which isn't on Spotify, but you can find it places online. It's on the Internet Archive. I highly recommend Machina 2, especially if you like Machina 1. Since then, say 2007 reformation on, it's been so hit and miss, and eventually I just kind of jumped ship around like late Teargarden era.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we saw them actually in a small venue during the pre-Oceania. No, yeah,
it was still in the Teargarden era.
Yeah.
Oceania lineup, though.
Right.
They were kind of about to make Oceania.
Yeah, so we were like, and we were right up front. It was the Showbox, I think the Sodo.
In Seattle.
Showbox in Seattle, which is a cool venue. And if you wait in line long enough, you can be right up front. It
was great. It was an awesome show. And since then, we've always talked about, why don't they just stick to the smaller venues? It's a much better situation for them. But they, especially Billy, seems to really want to be a big arena band. And I think fueling that is a lot of sort of what do you call it, like retroactively revisionist history going on right now, because Autumn is supposed to be part 3 of a concept record that started with Melancholy as part 1, Machina as part 2, and now this is part 3 of the story. Okay, we need to dig into this.
Are we going to get
tell you about
super
this.
nerdy here?
I'm going to get super nerdy here. Okay, Melancholy. When originally asked, around that time about is it a concept record, if you look at the discs, it's like dusk to twilight, and then the other disc is like sunrise to, and they said, well, it's call it a loose concept record. The sort of concept of the album is like a day, like
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah,
and that was it. And listening to the lyrics, I mean, I don't think you can grab out any like characters or actual narrative. But then over time it became, oh no, it's like a narrative concept record, and the main character is Zero. Just because of that sort of iconic Zero outfit and the fact that it was a big song from that album. Melancholy was intended to be kind of its own.
Wait, Machina?
Or Machina. Onto Machina, which is split into 1 and 2, was put together that way, and the character was Glass, and there was a narrative, and it was sort of this meta commentary about them as a band, and so that was, but it was not linked to Melancholy. It was not pushed as this like part 2 of the Melancholy story or anything. So to now say this is part 3 feels like it's just kind of trying to get people into it.
Yeah, when there's already so many things that people have been asking them to do for so long, and then they just come along and do. Billy Corgan is kind of just he's like Guillermo del Toro. It's like he's always saying he's going to do stuff, and like very few of it actually comes to fruition.
Yeah, and the sort of retroactive, the revisionist thing bothers me, to go back and say, no, right, this was the intention the whole time. It's a lot like George Lucas.
Oh.
Just saying like,
shots fired.
Oh, well, I had this planned out the whole time, and it was always supposed to be all this. Mm-hmm. By the way, I don't give a shit about Star Wars, so
don't comment.
That's just like, I just kind of know that through pop culture osmosis. I don't actually give a shit. So what do we think about this being like this big 33 song story that's gonna fold out over time via his podcast?
I mean, I think it just depends on like your position as a listener. Like I have the complete opposite position that you have, where like I knew of the Smashing Pumpkins. Actually, I think Melancholy came out when I was in elementary school, and it was huge, but I didn't really like, I wasn't really like I didn't really know like modern music. And so I just like knew about it, but I didn't like have the album or anything like that. And so I've sort of like dropped in a little bit here and there. Like I've heard the singles, I've heard some stuff over the years we've been together. So I don't really care about any of that stuff,
Yeah,
I'm just like,
sense.
is this a good
song?
Is this a good song? And like, is it cool? And like, is this something that I don't know, is it something that I would jump into and be like, okay,
right,
here's a Smashing Pumpkins album I might listen to, instead of like going back and getting more familiar with the early stuff, which would probably be a better route to go.
That makes sense. And it's probably what most of the general public would think about the Smashing Pumpkins. They're not like, wait, there's new Smashing Pumpkins? Please tell me it's a continuation of the Glass story from Machina 1 and 2. Like, no, that's not happening. It's for us nerds that were obsessed with the band back in the day.
And I love when bands like do things like that for fans, but it's just sometimes if there's like nothing behind it, if it's just like saying it, it has to actually be cool.
Yeah. So, okay, that's 10 minutes of context.
We better get talking.
Let's talk about Beguiled and what's sort of come from autumn so far. And I'm going to talk a little bit about when we saw them at Irving Plaza in New York recently at a small free show we won tickets to on the radio. We'll get to that in a second.
Yeah.
Beguiled starts out, chug a chug chug. I'm instantly happy to hear guitars, but underwhelmed at what they're doing. And you got like a kick clap thing going with it, which is interesting. Doesn't last long because Chamberlain comes in. I'm always happy to hear that. Like I said, one of my favorite things about the Pumpkins is Jimmy Chamberlain, and his presence hasn't really been there the last few records.
Yeah, they've been exploring more like synthy stuff. And
yeah, Sear might as well not have had Jimmy. And it felt like, hey, he's back for the first time since like 2008. Use him. But it seems like they made the record they want to make with what they wanted to make with Sear. So whatever. And moving into this one, it's like, oh, cool. He's behind the kit. He's doing stuff.
It's a different sound from what they've been doing. It's a callback to early stuff, but it's not as complex. It's like very radio friendly. And I'm wondering if that was the intention behind this as the single.
It kind of seems that way, especially with what they were doing with these little shows in Chicago and New York being presented through radio stations and very involved with like the local radio. It seemed to the mission seemed to be get the message out to people who liked us when we were at our peak, that are a little older now, that maybe still listen to the radio, that Pumpkins are back and here's their new rock song. And
also maybe a bit of like, because when you listen to the song, it's like everything just starts happening like so fast. Like guitar comes in and then he's singing and it's like a short verse and then the chorus comes in.
Yeah.
And it's like just no time is wasted. So it might be a little bit of that, like we're going to grab some newer fans maybe who like don't have the patience for a whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's no Through the Eyes of Ruby. It's no Porcelina of the Vast Oceans. Those are very long songs.
Okay.
It's no Glass and the Ghost Children.
But this has like no intro, basically.
Yeah, especially when they did it live on late night, and it kind of went right into it. And by the time we get to the chorus, and it's just Return the Faith, I feel like I'm still digging it at that point, but but there's just this like voice in the back of my head that's like anytime something new happens, I'm like, oh, that's the guitar, oh, that's the chorus. But I was still kind of sold on the energy and the good production, I thought.
Yeah, the production was really good. That's what I thought too. I thought it was just like a good solid melody. I think my main problem is that it really feels kind of like copy paste, like verse, chorus, and then you get to like halfway through the song and it's like 2 minutes in and they've done like all that. So there's a lot of modern pop songs that are only 2 minutes long. We're only halfway through at this point. And instead of like taking it somewhere, it's just like, and again,
Yeah. The song just kind of happens again.
And with Return the Faith being like repeated a lot at the end, it's just a little repetitive and not as creative and innovative as I would want a Smashing Pumpkins like new rock guitar song to sound.
Yeah. With James Iha being back as well, you get the return of Iha on the whammy, which is also incredible to hear again. But same thing. It's like, oh, Iha back on the whammy. That's great. Wow, wow. And then voice in the back of my head, like, oh, that's it. He's just doing a kind of rise and then descend thing. And then what's crazy is that part comes back. And like you said, it's like pretty much just copy pasted. He does the exact same whammy part again towards the end. Now there is that cool little break where it like stops and he does that like ching ching ching.
Yeah.
That part's really cool.
Yeah.
And that's just an example of like, oh, something different happened halfway through and it caught me off guard.
Crumb, and then we were like, yeah, oh, okay, that
then it's just back to chug a chug chug.
I do have to say, if you haven't seen the music video, I love his outfit so much in this video. It's
an amazing outfit.
It's a pretty neat video overall, but this is like the coolest Billy has ever looked. I love it. It looks like his giant like goth wedding gown almost thing. It's so cool. He can't wear it live because it's got all these like the sleeves coming down. Anyway, check it out.
Yeah, the video I found. Now, I don't think I've ever said the word cringe on this channel yet. I try to avoid it.
Maybe once.
Maybe once.
I think you said it once.
I found the video a little cringe.
Yeah, I get what he was. It was like his family was in it, and the band members' family members were in it, and they were all sort of like representing who they were. So, like different cultural backgrounds that they have, they'd wear, things. I like the thought behind it, and while it's not the most like well produced video in the world, I can see there was a heart behind it, and there was a message behind it. So I'll definitely give him that.
I think that kind of sums up why I'm still on board with this as a whole. Is like, it feels like they're alive, and it feels like there's some effort. And if you were following the Pumpkins in the dark days of like, say, 2015, where they had like the drummer from Rage and the bassist from Killers, like, it was so nothing. Like, this band is just dead in the water. To have them sort of just to see the effort and some passion and love into it again, just has me excited, happy for them. It doesn't have to be the greatest song in the world.
Mm-hmm. And, maybe transitioning here into talking, we got to wrap up, but we did see them live.
Yeah. And
seeing them live felt good. I mean, it was a show full of people who won free tickets over the Radiohead over the radio. And so you can imagine what kind of annoying
there was annoying people. There's always
there.
The guy right by you, like, this is you, right? Mm-hmm. And I am drunk guy with the plastic cup, right? Just like, Billy. And then he like turns to like the girl he came in and is like, I gotta get a picture with Billy. I gotta get a picture. Meanwhile, they're like playing a nice acoustic version of Tonight. Like, dude, shut the fuck up.
This is put your hand up. This is how I saw the concert also.
Yeah.
Let's pretend there's a phone here.
A guy live streaming to Facebook the entire show.
A 2-hour concert, and he did the entire thing. He ran out of battery at one point and like went and got like a power bank somehow and came back.
That's right. He ran out of battery, and we were like, yes.
Yeah. I mean, I saw the show through this part of his arm. But it's like, looking back though, it's the memory is of how cool it was to see them performing and feeling like they had like a magic there again.
I would say the band was on fire. I've seen them so I never saw the original run. They broke up in 2000, came back in 2007 when I was like heavy into them. That was like my peak. Like, I'm obsessed with the Pumpkins, and now they're back. So I saw them in 2007. That's probably the best show I saw. And then we saw them in 2010. Billy was the only original member at that point. I saw that lineup again on the Oceania tour. That's maybe 2012. And I haven't seen them since then. So it's been a long time. And I think this was the perfect way to come back and see this band, it kind of does feel like they're back, which is great. It kind of took a few years of ramp up, but it does feel like they're back and doing their thing. And that's kind of my feelings on it. I'm going to listen to this album as it comes out via Billy's podcast, which check out if you want. It's called 33 with William Patrick Corgan. I think it's a cool idea, but maybe a little tedious to put out a 33-song record weekly.
Yeah, that's like over 6 months of...
Yeah.
Which is a pretty common rollout. We can talk about that in another video. That's a pretty common rollout time lately. I mean, we're coming up on 20 minutes here, so okay. I agree. Unless you want to talk long, we'll have a longer video.
I want to hear what people think. What did you think of Beguiled? I know we've heard some other songs from the podcast and some other songs they've been playing live, like Empires. What are you thinking so far? What's your history with the band? And what do you think of this current incarnation? And what do you think of Autumn so far? All right. Thanks for watching. This is Not Every Single. I'm Joe.
And I'm Stephanie.
We'll be talking more Pumpkins kind of as it goes, so stick around. Bye.
Bye.